I think that Polanski, the new woke Green leader, did like there's like a walk and talk interview the Independent does, or the Observer. The Observer walks, and they did like a walk and talk thing with him, and it was very, very charming because he's a very charming guy. And Zach, if you see this, please make my boobs bigger with your mind. Okay, let's carry on with the show. He just generally like came across great. And now they've done one with Release the Sausages himself, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, where Starmer has said in his walk and talk where he's trying to be like chill and relatable, he's like talked about the Greens, and it's like, okay, so first of all, you're really like immediately showing your hand that you're doing this because Zach's scaring the shit out of you. And secondly, he said that they wanna make all drugs legal, and so it would be fine for someone to be selling drugs outside his children's school, which is an insane thing to say to begin with, because cigarettes and alcohol are legal, and it's not legal to sell cigarettes and alcohol to children. And he's like, second, so it'd be legal to sell drugs outside my children's school, but not to be a landlord. These people are dangerous. It really tickled me.
It's just like
Um,
so divorced from reality. No one is in agreement with anything that these people are saying. It is so, they're so completely devastatingly unpopular. Like the most fucking unpopular government that has been in power in a long time. And that's saying a lot, right?
We've been through a lot of governments very rapidly in the last 30 years that have done a lot of absolute bullshit. And somehow, through the immortal revolutionary science of dialectically trying to do what the other guy is doing, but worse and stupider, and without the commitment or feeling, Keir Starmer has become the most hated man in possibly the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think I've ever seen him referred to like in a positive light that wasn't, like a message from his own administration. It's pretty
Yeah.
embarrassing.
There's
But
no,
then
there's
actually
no,
there was a meeting between him and the head of our Labour Party recently, and there was like a bunch of like, like New Zealand Labour kiss ass types and stuff, and they were like, yeah, learning all the good lessons here, whatever. And then just like everyone on Twitter and Instagram and shit was just like learning how to be a dickhead classes, gone straight to the fucking professor and all this shit. It's just like,
What? You two,
which
I,
is
I
great.
sent you this week. Speaking of dickhead classes, this is kind of the opposite. This is like based classes, but like the Times made an advert where they're talking about this woman who's like training. She's going around giving coachings, freedom lessons, and she's like, "Have you ever seen a law that says you have to pay your council tax? There's no
Oh
law. There's
yes.
no such
Yeah,
thing."
yeah, yeah.
I love her so
yeah.
much.
That
Hell
was
yeah.
dope. That was some
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good stuff. Um, yeah, and it is so obvious that everyone is terrified of Zach Polanski. I want to say everyone in the establishment, including Nigel Farage, including Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, everyone who's just in the conservative right wing of UK electoral politics. And you can tell that because they had him on Question Time this week, and he's going to be their favorite person to have on Question Time because the way that they're trying to pitch it, I guess, the establishment media being like, oh, this guy's evil and you should be scared of him and blah, 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 is that he has the sixth form student politics and everything he says is unreasonable and ridiculous. But they've been trying to do that, and it's not been that successful because he's been
Mm.
getting more and more support. Everyone's like, oh, we haven't tried sixth form politics. Maybe young people are smart. I don't know. Young people, like specifically referring to sixth form, that's like it's like a year that you're in school. It's like 2 years that you're in school, and it's like, yeah, you're talking about people being educated, like as they're being
Yeah.
educated. Anyway, whatever. So they're like they got him on Question Time, and they're talking to him about why he doesn't want to murder migrants, and he's just saying like, well, look, I think that what everybody forgets is that migrants are performing this like huge important service, and as soon as we like get rid of migrants, we're just gonna like have a bunch of holes in the workforce where people are not going to be able to they're not going to be able to fill it because people in the UK have got so comfortable that they don't want to do things like be a care worker or be an NHS frontline worker or anything like that. Everybody just wants to like sit in their fucking room and be a podcaster, right? And he's just kind of like making this point, but they had this. They had this like every single host just like cringing as I say that, including our producer. Yeah, just like they have this like 15-second clip of him being like, I don't know about you, but I don't really fancy wiping anyone's bum. And that's a thing that migrants do that's really important. And so the conservative media, which is it's crazy that they've done this. Literally, the right wing conservative media has gone on to be like, look, everyone, Zach Polanski thinks migrants should wipe people's bums, and it's like. Bro, you want them to go into camps? Like, what are you talking about? Like, how is anyone in your corner like lapping this up? Like, what is going on? Like, there's no sort of like, I don't know, hypocritical gotcha that you could get here from this, and everybody could go and watch the show and see for themselves that he's not saying this. But even some people on the left have fallen for it as well, which has been really embarrassing. Like, I was in someone's stream, I'm not going to mention the name. I did speak to some of the people in the chat who were talking about this particular clip, and I was saying, hey, this is a 15-second clip that's out of context, posted by a right-wing account on Twitter. I think that we need to be a little bit more critical. And they were going, no,
maybe just like investigate a little bit harder before you know.
Yeah. No, some of the people were just like, no, there's no excuse for saying that there needs to be an underclass and people should be exploited. This guy is out of the door. And I was like, oh my God, fucking whatever, man. Who cares? Anyway, this is why I shouldn't go online. Speaking of, go on.
Well, I just want to say quickly about like Farage and Polanski, I think is really telling. It's telling of a lot of stuff, right? Like The Economist just recently is like, reform actually have really sensible policies. I think their front page thing was like, Nigel Farage, Captain Sensible, and it was just like, you are endorsing Nazism. But it's telling of a lot of things, similar to this. Like I've heard like elderly relatives of my family saying like the Greens are being unrealistic. They're promising things they can't deliver, like all of this stuff. And I'm just like, why are you know how bad the other guy, whatever. Anyway, but I think what's really telling is that like in the older generation, there's one idea of common sense, and in the younger generation, there's one idea of common sense, and like maybe both are not completely true to reality, but the younger idea is like it's just common sense that perhaps naively we could just fund better welfare programs, the NHS more, all this stuff. We could just give that money to poor people and help out migrants who are coming over here and just support the country and it will get better. And broadly, that's closer to reality than like, it's just common sense. You should just install a massive machine gun in the channel that just shoots indiscriminately into Europe, just spraying bullets nonstop 24/7.
Yeah, I think it's wild that the argument, well, like the conservative criticisms are exactly the same there and here. Like even down to the like, oh, this is sixth form politics or whatever, like that. We get that a lot in regards to our Green Party down here as well. People be like, oh, like blah blah blah, they need to go study economics 101. And then you actually look at like the credentials of a lot of the people in the parties, and it's like generally the people they're criticizing do actually have, like a decent political and economic education. And it's kind of just like, okay, well, there's your problem. So you guys are still stuck on economics 101,
Exactly.
It's like you're still doing the trickle down thing. You're still doing the, like all these basic kind of things that might get taught in 101. And then it's like, if you actually went and studied these things in depth, you'd be like, oh no, these are just like, these aren't things. Like these are, and it's like, even, I mean, most of the field of economics is just like self-justifying like bullshit.
Oh
anyway.
yeah.
But and then it's like, even like, it's crazy to make these kind of left criticisms when it's like most of the biggest, most influential like figures on the left have been like political economists and all that kind of stuff.
Literally.
Yeah, literally, like, and literally thinking about like Marx studying economics and fucking everything else under the sun, and it's like,
I think Lenin was a trained lawyer as well. It's just so many,
But despite all that, though, I had no idea that Polanski you were talking about was the Zach Polanski Greens Party guy. And I think if you
Oh,
had said Farage and Polanski in a sentence beforehand, I thought we would have been having a way different discussion. Anyway,
okay.
um,
Welcome to Red Planet,
yeah,
everyone.
welcome to Red
Let's
Planet, everyone.
start the show like we usually do by asking, Neil, what's the most base thing you've done this week or since last show, which was a few weeks ago because of technical difficulties?
It's been a while. Yeah, I've not had a great month. I've had like maybe 8 or 10 horrible things in a row happen to me. So I haven't really been doing a whole lot. But I think the most base thing that I've done this week is get back to streaming, get back to having a normal life. And I guess like yeah, speaking to my friends that I trust who have been giving me advice on how to deal with depression, how to deal with looking at different ways that you could do therapy and yeah, just that kind of stuff. And it's been really good and productive to do that. And I got back to streaming at the start of this week, and it felt really good to do. And I feel more normal now. I'm definitely please let me back inside. I'm normal. I'm not going to hurt anybody. And that's that. But actually, another base thing that I did, a thing that's actually based is, and I've been wanting to do this for a long time, wanting to reduce the amount of meat that I eat, and this has kind of gone hand in hand with a bit of a health condition that I got earlier this year called fatty liver, which means that I can't really have the same supplements that I used to take when I was going to the gym and working out and bodybuilding. But I've learned how to make seitan meat. Obviously, it's not real meat, but it's like, imitation meat. So like seitan chicken, seitan beef. I'm figuring it out. I've got a whole bunch of vital wheat gluten and lots of different spices and stuff that I've been like trying to like make taste like chicken. And today, like I've actually made something taste like what would just be chicken, like a flavorless chicken kind of texture and feel. So I'm really happy about that. And the reason that I'm mentioning working out is because Vital Wheat Gluten has like, I don't know, it's like 75% protein. So for every 100 grams of 100 grams of Vital Wheat Gluten flour, there's like 75 grams of protein. So you can literally just like make 400 grams, slam it into 4 separate portions, and there's like your 4 days worth of protein for going to the gym, basically. On top of other things that you might have. So yeah, that's been really good. I've been meaning to do that for a long time. I think I'm probably going to be like a new term that I'm coining, which is vegan, which is VEGGAN, which means vegan but still eggs. So that's probably where I'm at the moment. So I'm pretty proud of where I've got to in that regard. I'm sure our sweet Kira, that we haven't seen in a long time, I'm sure she'd be proud of us. So that's the most base thing that I've done.
Chickens do just lay eggs. Like the
They
conditions
do
chickens are
that.
kept in are not good, but
No,
also
Yeah.
chickens do just produce eggs.
they do, don't they? I think the ultimate goal is like caring for some chickens on like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
On the
a
Zad.
It's kind of
permaculture
like,
garden. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
I've thought about that a lot over the years, and I've had periods where I've been vegan, and I have a lot of friends that are like very like political vegans and stuff. And I've always felt that like my issue itself isn't necessarily with the consumption of animal byproducts, but with the industrial processes behind it, and like
Yeah.
not just the animal welfare, but also the agricultural stuff and the environmental effects and stuff like that. So yeah, like I have been in the past. There was like a while where I was like vegan, but still, you know, eating stuff from my parents' farm and all that kind of stuff, which is like, a whole other thing. But anyway, so what about you? What have you been up to?
I've actually been sorry, my I've been recovering from a cold. Um, I've actually been waiting for a few weeks of us not doing the show, eagerly waiting to say I can't say what my most based thing was because my most based thing was too based for me to say in the podcast. But it's been long enough now that I've got a bunch of other stuff. So I'm telling you about the thing I can't tell you just because I've been so excited. But anyway, I've been back at the hub. There was a small community conflict thing that needed to be worked out. People who know about what's been going on in my life know I've got like various conflicts that need working through from the last couple of years, and like yeah, I took the most of November off of being in the hub because of this thing. Got resolved. Turns out resolving conflicts actually pretty easy when people are committed to actually resolving it, and great. So I've been doing hub shifts again. I had my first shift at the new location, which led straight into the town hall, which is like the democratic process around the hub, which was a really cool meeting because like we're talking about, because it's December, like we're talking about like what do we envision the future looking like and going into the next year. And like we had this question of like where do you see like harm reduction being at in 2027 and all sorts of different stuff. And we're incorporating a lot of different plans for, extending the most basic thing the hub is for, which is for drug users, but also like seeing how we can like do outreach to local homeless people, like people and communities. Um, I had my first opportunity to hand out radar keys actually. And speaking of that, we have been like looking at different plans to help out trans people. My partner and I might start doing like an injection day at the hub where we just say like anyone who takes injectable HRT of any kind, like you can just come along and we do our injections all at the same time, just for like better needle practice. There was the Hub fundraiser yesterday, which was really fun. Just got to go dance with some cool people, the absolute safest possible crowd to like go to a party with, because if any of us were on too much of something, like everyone has naloxone. Um, Last month, one thing I wanted to mention is not like based to do or whatever, but it's worth highlighting because I think not enough people are aware or do or engage actively in practices to do with it is Trans Day of Remembrance. So every 20th of November is Trans Day of Remembrance, and there are like thousands of vigils worldwide where all the names of the trans people who've died in the last year will be read out, and like there'll be this like kind of mass mourning and collective focus on like how we do better and how we fight for the living and how we bring justice for the dead, and like that's a really important thing, and I think that not enough people observe it. I think that like with things getting worse for trans people, it would mean a lot to trans people for like cis people to show up to those. So like, 2026 TDOR, I'd like to hear less names and I'd like to see more cis people there, like ready to fight for us. And then lastly, today I was just involved in a research thing, which is just like a little focus group discussion-y thing to do with DIY HRT, which was pretty cool because I've also been involved recently in planning a harm reduction guide for people who are producing their own estrogen. More on that as it develops. But Tim, what's the most basic thing you've done since last episode?
Yeah, I mean it's been a little while. But I'm just gonna go with something that happened, well, just the other day. There was a big protest here, for our government has our freakish coalition government of corruption has imposed a ban on puberty blockers, which is bullshit, and it's yeah, just totally fucked and against all reason. So there's a big protest, to support the movement to reverse that. And I didn't go, but I helped out a friend who did go by taking care of their kid. So, that's 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 important too. But yeah,
It
that's
is.
about it. But we need to keep moving. So, why don't
Yep.
we transition into the news? But first, we want to know what kind of base stuff you've been doing. You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode. But first, yeah, the start the news. I'll start this week with a little update on the French energy giant Total Energies, which is facing war crime allegations for its role in the 2021 massacre near its gas project in Mozambique. So, Mozambican security forces who were guarding Total's facility allegedly tortured and executed at least dozens of civilians in shipping containers on that site. So Total are denying all knowledge and responsibility for the actions of government troops and related security forces who are involved in guarding the Afungi Peninsula gas refinery development. But the complaint alleges that they outsourced the violence to local forces to keep their own hands clean while profiting from resource extraction in the conflict zone, which is a classic move from the imperialist capital playbook. The British government initially offered financial guarantees for UK companies seeking to take part in what was heralded as an unprecedented opportunity for economic development in Mozambique. But after suspending support following the bloodshed in Palma, Britain is now being urged to walk away by environmental campaigners who say the gravity of the allegations against Total must be a red line for the financial backers of its liquefied natural gas, which is LNG, project in Mozambique. So this is a familiar story of large corporations profiting from human rights abuses outside of the imperial core, and it's directly comparable to the Lafarge case in Syria, which is also working through the courts at the moment. So Lafarge, which is now called Wholesome, Holcim, paid millions to terrorist groups, including ISIS, to provide mercenary forces to protect their cement factories during the Syrian civil war between 2013 and 2014, so in order to maintain the profits of their cement factories. So this led to criminal charges in France and the US for complicity in crimes against humanity and terrorism financing. So yeah, Total have continued to demonstrate that they've learned nothing from the past. They just announced the lifting of the force majeure on its gas project, despite the dramatic security and humanitarian situation. Laurette Philippot from Friends of the Earth France said the UK and Dutch governments must refuse to renew their financial support and withdraw from Mozambique LNG. Both the British and Dutch governments are complicit in providing and incentivizing investment in extractive industries in Mozambique during this conflict, claiming that it could bring huge rewards to a neglected region of Africa. But as our boy Walter Rodney has pointed out, and how Europe underdeveloped Africa, the only neglect of these regions was the deliberate underdevelopment by Europe, while African resources and labor were being used to develop Europe and the rest of the world, which is what we're still seeing here with both the gas extraction there and even over in the Middle East and Syria with the cement factories and things over there. This is all stuff that is extracted for the purpose of, like international capital at the expense of the locals, and very literally like at the expense of their lives in this case. But Mia, why don't you tell us what's happening over there with Corbyn and Sultana?
Yes. So this is the news that your party, despite all of the teething problems, has finally had a conference, a founding conference, and there have been some positive developments. So your party, which is now the official voted on name of the Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana political party that's focusing on democratic member-led policy, has had its initial founding conference last weekend. And in what seems to be an early adopted tradition, there was a bunch of drama and controversy. However, there were some interesting and positive moves that came out of it. For one, the biggest glaring issue within the party, the main MPs who had joined out of a desire to stand up for Palestine as a single issue, who happened to be conservative, misogynist, transphobe landlords as well, Adnan Hussein and Iqbal Mohammed in particular, quit the party before the conference even happened. Of course, in standard transphobe fashion, they complained of being bullied and purity tested. Secondly, key members of the leadership of the Socialist Workers' Party were banned from the conference, which in a bizarre but powerful display of principle inspired Zara Sultana to boycott the first day of it, saying that she didn't think anyone should be excluded, especially when a policy on membership hadn't been decided by members at that point, even though I think most people who are in Britain who know about the Socialist Workers' Party would probably not boycott a conference for them being banned, especially if you were a key member of the party that was holding this conference. But anyway, on a better note, there was a policy voted on at the conference that won a solid majority of 63% that said that trans liberation was a founding policy that the party should have, and subsequently that trans liberation is something the party will campaign on in order to achieve it. There was some embarrassing behavior from the people running the stage who cut a trans woman's mic when she was calling the ex-members transphobic. Well, some ex-members transphobic. It was likely Hussein and Mohammed that she was referring to. And the poshest student that you've ever heard who read Mao the day before the conference decided to quote some during a speech about what your party should be was optically a bit cringe. But overall, it was rather endearing. Ultimately, what it feels like is that members and attendees of the conference want your party to be more than just a standard political party and more of a vanguard party of the revolution, with other motions passed such as collective leadership with no one person representing or being in charge of the party, and allowing dual party membership with allied parties that at this point would probably just look like the Greens. I don't know if they would feel, I don't know if members would feel good allying with the Workers' Party of Great Britain because they're basically just red fash. And I'm not sure how they would feel about allying with, the Labour Party. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't feel good about allying with the Labour Party. But of course, it does seem to have taken a more positive turn. So we'll be keeping a bit of an eye on it. It's while it might feel like electoral politics, it isn't really electoral politics because the stated goals of the members seems to be that they want to be more socialist and revolutionary. So we'll keep an eye on it and let you know how it goes. But Sophie, why don't you tell us about some more truly revolutionary stuff that's been going on?
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about electoral politics. I'll just keep this commentary brief because I know we've got a guest coming in. But that story and this one show how people that can engage in revolutionary action against and like we usually when we say within systems, we mean like just I don't know, like becoming a cop to change them from the inside and other like completely ridiculous gibberish. But like I'm going to be talking about defend our juries who've been doing mass protests where they get themselves arrested, which like when Extinction Rebellion were doing it was pretty fucking useless because they didn't really have a plan about how that mechanically would work in the system to cause a problem. Defend our juries, on the other hand, do, and it seems to be working. So similarly, that electoral stuff can still be like revolutionary engagement with electoralism. If it's done right, we'll see. Defend Our Juries, the group most well known for staging protests provoking mass arrests in which participants hold signs which read, quote, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine action, end quote, like how it would be illegal to say, quote, I think that Donald Trump should be blown up with a bazooka, end quote. It's not a thing I'm saying, it would be illegal to say that. So Defend Our Juries have been going absolutely sicko mode for the last 2 weeks. They had a 12-day Lift the Ban campaign where they had every single day more of these mass arrest protests where people write out these signs and wait for the police to arrest them. The group describes its core aims in its FAQs on its website as one, to bring to public attention the program to undermine trial by jury in the context of those taking action to expose the government dishonesty and corporate greed. Two, to raise awareness of the vital constitutional safeguard that juries can acquit a defendant as a matter of conscience, irrespective of a judge's direction that there is no available defense, a principle known as jury equity or jury nullification. And three, to ensure that all defendants have the opportunity to explain their actions when their liberty is at stake, including by explaining their motivations and beliefs. So this Lift the Ban campaign has been happening during the process to the judicial review, the process to look over and hopefully repeal the ban of Palestine action. In a closing statement this week of that process, Huda Amori, friend of the show, previous guest on the show, and co-founder of Palestine Action, said, my legal team has presented an open and shut case that this prescription amounts to discrimination, and the government provided no answer to the prima facie evidence put before the court. This includes evidence that its own advisors warned at the time that prescribing Palestine action would raise serious questions about why it was not banning other direct action groups using similar tactics, such as Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. The most disturbing revelation from this hearing has been the government's complete failure to address the severe chilling effect of this ban on free speech we have seen impact thousands of people across the country. Justice Chamberlain, more on him in a minute, warned of this when granting the judicial review, and the last 4 months have proved him right. The 200 arrests at the time have exploded to 2,717 people arrested under terrorism laws for silently holding a 7-word sign, many elderly and disabled. The court heard evidence of the utterly dystopian impact of the ban far beyond those expressing support for Palestine action, from a Jewish woman woken by police at her door over an email she sent criticizing the ban before it even came into effect, to the proposal of Sally Rooney withdrawing her books. To the prospect of Sally Rooney withdrawing her books. Other Orwellian incidents include local Palestine solidarity groups having bank accounts frozen, police interrogations of people going about their day for simply wearing a Palestine flag badge or t-shirt, all of which have nothing to do with Palestine action. The government's arguments in court have shown there is no justification for this dangerous authoritarian assault on our fundamental civil liberties. Great statement from Huda Mori. It's worth saying that all of this is happening in the context that David Lammy, our awful, wet, justice minister is just trying to get rid of juries as much as possible at the moment. And part of what's going on here is that like public services are fucked and the billionaires are just sucking all the wealth and function out of the economy. But part of it is also like these protests are having a very big effect on like the number of people who need to be processed and tried because like nearly 3,000 people is a lot of people. And as we reported last show, the as we reported last show, they're already looking at doing like batch trials of people to get through this number of people. Um, so, the need to defend our juries is more and more apparent. I want to quickly shout out to PSS, Police Station Support. I'm involved in some police station support group chats, and they've been just absolutely goated throughout the Lift the Ban stuff. They've been just doing so much around the clock support to make sure that when people come out of the police station, they have someone there and they have everything they need. Um, we uh, It's also worth mentioning briefly that the judge was swapped out at the start of the judicial review for someone who's just more pro-genocide, basically. Defend Our Juries have announced it's going to do a new Lift the Ban campaign as the judicial review ends. And yeah, we'll just have to keep you posted on that as well. But we are going to go into our guest segment now. Briefly, I want to remind you that Red Planet is a show made possible by our patrons over at patreon.com/red_planet. Please go there and check it out to support us. But for now, we are going to be talking to Sean, who we've actually had on the show before, but for a different org. Today, we are talking about Cooperation Manchester, which is modeled similarly to American cooperative networks like Cooperation Jackson. And I think rather than trying to explain totally myself, um, for people who are familiar with those already, that will clue you in a little bit. But Sean maybe can tell us directly. Sean, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear
Hey,
me?
man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
here you
yeah.
go.
Cool. What am I telling you directly?
Oh, just give us an overview of Cooperation Manchester, please, for someone who's got no idea about Cooperation Jackson or anything.
Woo! Straight on the spot. Great.
Yeah. Okay, hang on. How are
There
you
you are.
doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay.
It's
I'm pretty
great to have you
excited.
back.
Yeah, it's really nice to be back. How long has it been since the last
Oh,
time?
it's
Couple
over
years.
over a year, yeah, 2 years maybe.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Different, very different times.
Hmm.
Big
Well,
time.
that'll be a good. It'll be good to talk about that and the
Yeah,
sort of evolution of things that you've been doing
Defo.
since the last time you were on the show, because I'm sure that'll be interesting to our audience.
yeah. So do you want me to start with this attempt
Yeah.
to
Yes,
try and
please.
establish
Yeah.
Manchester first? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um. So essentially, it is a project which, yes, has sprung out of the inspiration from Cooperation Jackson, and it is aiming to ultimately grow community power, people power, and proper, genuine democracy across Greater Manchester, and to um, put communities and put people who live in areas at the very heart of decision making processes that affect those areas and their everyday lives. Um, and yeah, I suppose to the develop mass agency, really, people to take control of their own lives and their own journeys and their own destinies together. Um, and the main mechanisms which we're using to try and achieve that are assemblies. Um, and essentially they are kind of open forums. You guys have done a 3 hour thing on assemblies recently, right? Yeah, I've not looked at
Yeah.
it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. We're big pro assemblies here. Yeah. Yeah. Big time.
Yeah, I looked at it. I thought 3 hours, and I thought, you know, I'm gonna get through that one tonight. But yeah, essentially, assemblies are like open meetings, open forums that are very inclusive, and participatory, um, and are open to anyone who like lives or works in an area or who has a particular interest or relationship with an area, coming together and discussing local issues. Not just issues, but also aspirations. I think that's really important to note. Um, we've got to we've got to say yes to things as much as we say no to things. I think we can kind of get really bogged down in the issues, bad stuff, the crap. Um, and what can sometimes really help with mitigating that is a bit of radical imagination, a bit of proactivity, some creativity, and like daring to dream what your little town that you might not think much of could be like if only we got organized. Um, so yeah, so assemblies, and they can be any size that you want really. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. At the moment, we're thinking in like three different sizes. The neighborhood level, which at the moment um, we're doing that by ward. So in the you have an international audience, I'm aware. So we have wards in the UK, just like you have districts and whatnot elsewhere. So yeah, the neighbourhood assemblies are at ward level, and we would like for those to confederate into borough assemblies, borough-wide assemblies. So boroughs tend to consist of about 10 wards, and then there's I'm gonna get this wrong. Mule, help me out. Like there's a number of boroughs in Greater Manchester, 9.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, something like that. So they confederate to citywide assemblies. And neighborhood assemblies are, yeah, like I said, are open to anyone who lives or works in the area. Um, but he's counting them now. He's going Trafford,
Yeah.
Bolton, Rochdale, and he's going around the outskirts first before he gets to the obvious ones in the
Yes,
middle.
correct. You know me very well. Yeah. Thameside,
Um,
Stockport.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I would
Wigan.
think. Yeah. I had Wigan first, mate.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's big.
Yeah.
It's big.
I think
Big
it is
place.
10. I think it is 10, but nine,
Yeah,
10. Yeah.
makes sense, wouldn't it? Let's say it's now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm getting a bit off track here. It's because Mule's here. I mean, those two are like got silly, similar sense of humor, no
Yeah,
problems,
yeah.
no
Having a
disruptions.
psychic
I'm gonna
effect on
stop.
each
I
other.
need to stop looking at him. Yeah, like, yeah,
Tell you what, I'll
yeah.
just turn
Right,
off the
sorry.
camera.
It's okay. You can just look at me instead. It's all right. You
Yeah.
got ward level
Cool.
assemblies and then
Yeah.
together into like regional ones.
So neighborhood, so wards, which is neighbor, we call neighborhood assemblies, borough assemblies, and citywide assemblies. And of course, you can have like national assemblies, you can have international assemblies. You've got like the Sortition Foundation at the minute, which is working across the UK
Yeah.
to create a permanent citizens' assembly, and the House of the People to replace the House of Lords. And there's all sorts of these kinds of projects really that are just trying to reawaken real democracy, I guess,
Yeah.
to bring back something that we deserve, right? So anyway, sorry, off track.
Well,
Um, So what we usually find is that it's people who are already somewhat engaged or have like some level of active care
hmm.
about the places that they live in. Um, so we get a lot of existing community organizers. We get a lot of like existing volunteers in the community and whatnot. So we're also like thinking about right, okay, because that's still a very small percentage of any neighborhood, any population of a place. So we're also trying to kind of reawaken the mutual aid spirit from COVID times,
Okay. So
which
would it be fair to say that you have a kind of dual democratic and economic work going on in terms of how you're trying to create change?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Um, it's democracy economically speaking as well. So yeah, we're very interested in worker co-ops, and we've been slowly building a network of existing worker co-ops in Manchester and trying to kind of politicize them and radicalize them a bit. It's often the case that they're not very either of those.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, what I would say, I think a good thing to talk about would be the launch, because I was actually at the launch of Cooperation
Yeah,
Manchester
yeah,
last year. You and I had a great discussion at Gaskell Gardens in the Frog Hut, chatting about,
yeah,
the whole reasons why it's really important to have an organization like Cooperation Manchester. And again, it's inspired by successful organizations like Cooperation Jackson.
yeah,
And again, yeah, just the idea of people, working class people, not even necessarily working class, just people in the neighborhood, in your community, your actual real community. I remember that was the thing that we spoke about, because it is often infantilizing and annoying when people use terms like the queer community, for example. Like, what is the queer community? Like, where is your queer community? Who are the queer people that live near you? Or are you just talking about people that you know online? And I think that that's like one of the biggest benefits, what you were talking about just then, in bringing all these like different kinds of organizations together. Like, I remember I was working with GMTU at the time, and there was a next to us there was a stall, and I think it was just like someone who sold kind of like knickknack kind of things in order to fund like a just like a charity that she was doing. And I just can't remember what it was, but but next to that there was like Bolton bike repair guys.
yeah.
Yeah, what's their organization called? Do you remember?
It was Platfield Bike Club. Yeah, and they were just kind of fixing bikes, weren't they?
That,
And
yeah,
but they were
you
called
could just
they were
bring your
called
bike
it was
and
also called the Diggers. Yeah, yeah,
Bolton Diggers, that was it. Yeah, because they do a similar thing to Manchester Urban Diggers. Yeah. And that
yeah,
was like
somewhat.
the
Yeah,
that was the beautiful thing about the launch to me, is that there was so much going on there, and you had like a massive representation of tenants union, trade union, workers co-ops, charity stuff that's a bit more radical than your average charity, and obviously Gaskell Garden project. Like, obviously bringing a bunch of organizations together like that is very difficult, but I think that like the way that you're talking about it now, in terms of like concentrating on the assemblies, I think that that's really smart, and I think that that's like a really good way to organize. Talk to us about some of like the difficulties in getting something like this started, because assemblies to your average person, when you go to like a community center in Moss Side, they're going to understand what you mean by like, let's do some community organizing. But people might not understand the benefit of assemblies. They might not have heard of assemblies. They might not know what's going on when it comes to assemblies. And it could be different when you go like literally one neighborhood across to Hume or Old Trafford. Talk to us about that kind of stuff. What kind of experience have you had with that?
yeah. People just like think, oh, school assemblies. You're like, no, it's this
Singing
whole
hymns.
thing. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. What? So someone's gonna get up and they're just gonna listen and then clap. Like, yeah. I think like yeah. So when we've done stalls, we've done a range of stalls. We've done some more safe ones where it's been kind of like quite lefty events, but then they've done some less safe ones, which are just like on high streets. When I say safe, I mean like political comfort zone. I don't mean like
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and kind of like open public events and stuff like that, and we just kind of bring it up there. So we ask people, um, like, what do you think about where you live? Like, what's going on? Like, what feelings have you got? What's really important to you? Um, about where you live, and then like, what could be different? What's missing? What is there a yearning in you, like in particular as an individual? or is there something that you see that's affecting other people in a certain way or whatever? Um, and then like inevitably, like they start kind of going on about the failings of the local authorities, the local councils. And you kind of like you get to this point whereby like you kind of realize that this person's got like all of this care, all of this love for where they live and for other people, and they really have again this yearning for things to improve, but they feel like there's no route to doing so. So we just go, have you heard of people's assemblies? Um, and they go, no, or someone might go, yeah, I've heard of the People's Assembly Against Austerity or something like that, you know.
Right.
So then it's just a case of explaining what that is. And we've also done some events. Yeah, so when you do it kind of one on one, it's really it's a lot more special, I feel, because you get that kind of you get that intimacy, right? You get to really connect with that person, you get to know what they care about, and then you kind of you have this opportunity to take them from this position of being like, oh well, there's nothing gonna fucking change to, oh actually I might be able to do something, you know, and this might be a way. Um, yeah, and we've also done like a few events where we've explained about assemblies as well to bigger audiences and whatnot. And we've put out some literature and stuff like that. I think it's it's education ultimately. Like it's a tool that has been um, purposefully hidden from us for so long, right? And it's not rocket science. Um, like we have like a really basic set of ground rules for our assemblies, and I'm definitely not going to reel them off right now off the top of my head because I can't remember them. But it's just kind of basic stuff about how to be how to be respectful, how to behave like an adult, um, and some kind of guidance on how to go about conflict. Because conflict, this is the big thing for me. Like, if we don't get handling conflict right, we're totally fucked.
Ah, I
Like,
don't know what you're on about. I've never heard anything like that. I haven't. No one on the panel here has experienced anything like that.
but like, I mean, obviously, like big style, like you can think of like that big conflict out there.
Yeah, yeah.
But like time and time again, like we have these groups and these organizations that are like politically fantastic in our eyes. Like we're like, oh my God, like this is brilliant. This is so fucking radical. This is gonna be a revolution. And then like something emotional happens and and people get triggered and there isn't the kind of there aren't the tools there in that group to kind of like to hold that, to be able to hold that and to maybe kind of help help with some repair, you know, down the line.
It's
So
a
yeah.
Yeah. It's a huge thing. Like there's an interview Mule did with someone when we were on the ZAD for the documentary. And it will be in the documentary when it's out. But like this woman, she is a therapist, she's a psychiatrist, and she is working on trauma and she's like very focused on the people on the ZAD and
Mm.
like in the activist scene in France generally. And she's saying in the interview just like it's just like we have to do so much like processing trauma because we're all being like traumatized by this system all the time and we're being like forced into this shape where we like can't handle things in a human way at all and we're just completely overwhelmed and it very much aligns for me with like some of the some of the most impenetrable like psychoanalytic thing like Deleuze and Guattari where they're just basically saying like capitalism makes you schizophrenic because it's just bombarding you with too much shit that just does not align in the slightest with like what you need and feel in your body and so it makes you detached from reality. And yeah, I think we're all just super overwhelmed all the time. It makes us really bad at handling basic community, the smallest stuff that we need to be able to handle.
Yeah, yeah, we are. Yeah, yeah, we've become cumulatively pretty deeply traumatized um, by the systems that we've had to live under by and their cultures and their sets of principles and values, and us feeling like we have to adhere to it in order to survive. Therefore, living in our egos a lot of the time. Um, yeah, and it's a whole thing that I am constantly like in so many minds over in regards to like talking about it, like in certain circumstances. I feel like this circumstance here is like there's an awareness of this stuff, but like we've got to meet people where they're at, and
Yeah.
I think I'm just finding recently that like you can radicalize so quickly, or like the radicalization process can like so easily speed up because you get so into it, and you're like, and you become a different person, a very different person. You have this, yeah, you really kind of reinvent yourself. Um, the little girls here, you you want to come on? Can she come on
Oh,
for one?
sweetie.
Can she come on for like two
Yeah,
seconds?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, of course
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah, defo.
There she is.
Oh,
Hi.
Raya. Oh my gosh, she's got
Look,
really long hair.
the people on
How's
the
it going?
internet.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, she's so
he's in New
shy.
Zealand.
Hi.
I think he's in New Zealand. That one. Can you believe that? Wow.
Oh.
Oh,
I had
sweet.
to dial up internet when I was doing it. Yeah. So, yeah, that we, I think we get kind of we go on these journeys that are
Mm,
like become so far removed from normal. And I'd
Yeah.
recommend to
mm.
anyone reading The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate, like his most recent book. It's
Sure.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's like in certain spaces we have to kind of really check ourselves for that, and like you know, like really meet people where they're at,
There is a
and
whole lot of not that happening. And
oh
it's
my
Yeah.
word.
it could be so like deeply frustrating when you like see it happening and the people the people who are doing it, you just know they're not gonna listen to you when you say to them like, hey, you're white and you're like in this black neighborhood and you're saying this like absurdly white supremacist stuff, like you don't even realize that you're being white supremacist, but you're just doing it, right? You're just doing it. You're babying people, you're treating them differently, you're talking down to them, telling them to shut up and all this stuff, and they don't get it and they're not going to get it, and it's the most deeply frustrating stuff. But like that's on, I think, like every organization. I
Yeah.
think that like you've hit like a really like a key thing there. There's been something that I've been saying on my streams like for a couple of months now, which is that like there's a brand of activists that thinks that just because they go to anti-fascist counter demonstrations, it means that they're just like not racist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like you know what I
Is
mean?
this
It's
such
like,
thing?
yeah, it's like
Where they
you
just
could
like punch the card. They're like, all right, we've done
yeah.
my non-racism for the
You
Done
month.
my
have you have like
non-racism for the month.
Yeah.
you have 9 stamps from Antifa protests. If you've
Yeah.
collected enough
Yeah.
stamps, you can turn it in for one free slur. Like
Yeah.
you get away, you get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
No, sure, Sean, I wanted to say this about like you said, like egos. That's super real. I think when you see people who are kind of clinging onto a space really tightly as like often when people turn very dogmatic in spaces, I think there's ego going on there, and it's not really obvious to people because they're talking in terms of like what's politically right and the right way to act. But what they're actually doing is like protecting a sense of self and the sense of themselves, like their sense of self aligning with the space and the org and the social like group around them and wanting it to not be in any way in conflict with them. They want there to not be anything kind of tough. They want control around it. I think that goes back to the trauma thing. I think a lot of people like find the spaces that we've formed to be very safe, and then they want them to not have anything that they find challenging in there. And then they act in ways that are like described in terms of like, well, this is like the woke thing to do, or this is like the politically most in line with our values thing to do. but isn't actually for the betterment of the group overall and the cohesion, and certainly not for like growth of the group when we talk about like encountering people who are the exact people you need to reach in like working class neighborhoods who aren't at the same like haven't had the same political education as you, and so it's tricky. Um, yeah, I just it's frustrating. I think it's like I'm in London, boo hiss, and like I think that in
All right,
London
London, isn't it?
especially, there's good cafes. Um, but like I think the London activist scene has a worse version of something that is in like a lot of activist scenes across the Imperial Core, where like this phenomenon of like spaces where everyone has the same political education feeling safe becomes like very stagnating. Like it becomes very like we want to keep this exactly how it is. But you have to this phrase about like meeting people where you're at. I've been recently talking a lot about like shattering of like your like reality that you've built out of that like political education. You need it to like break in order for it to affect the rest of the world. You need the two to like smash together. And like that is super necessary, but I think people are really, really scared of like bringing their kind of quite perfect machine to the rest of the world because it will necessarily like have to break to pieces in order to change anything. That's more
Yeah.
of a thought than a question or whatever. I just
Well,
like
I think like, well, I mean, it's kind of basic. Like, interactions are two-way like negotiations. They're reciprocal. Like, any interaction between you and another person, you and yourself, whatever, it's reciprocal. And like to kind of go in with an I'm right and you're really fucking wrong is like what?
You're setting
Yeah,
yourself up to fail.
how's it gonna land? You know, it's dominating. It's got a superiority moral complex to it. And I think, yeah, I really relate to what you were just saying, Sophie. And I think it's important to say that, like, well, at least I can say that, like, I'm able to say this because I've done it. You know, I've like out of being kind of sidelined by an extremely toxic, like mainstream um culture, like tried to seek solace and comfort in more kind of fringe groups. But the reality is we don't really get very far with comfort. Unfortunately, it'd been
Yeah.
lovely. But we yeah, it's like I think there's a bit of a comfort fetish, and like I think about my own family members and how much they're just absolutely terrified of like changing a little bit, like
Yeah.
as if they're not changing, like being changed all the time.
I think that's like
Um,
a super key bit, and this is also something that I've been trying to like drive home to people on the regs is, you know, comfort is a pillar of white supremacy. It's a pillar of neoliberal society. Like the fact that we are able to experience comfort in the imperial core is because of the oppression of people, you know, who are up
yeah.
against the jagged face of imperialism, the jagged blade of imperialism every single day. They can't escape it. You know, when you think about like the fact that you know, I'll never, you know, there's so many different examples of this, but like Palestinians in Gaza, there was a group of them who, like, because of the constant drone surveillance and like always having the knowledge that there is an Israeli fascist murderous drone, you know, going above their heads all the time, they they didn't learn, they knew how to do this, but they decided a way that we can deal with this, like mentally, this trauma, is to sing and harmonize with the notes of the drone that the drone is like emitting and stuff. And it's like, you know, I think about that, and then I think about like a group of white leftists who, like, you know, go into a council estate and then get mad when like they don't understand the concept of, you know, revolution and Lenin and all this stuff, and then they go, "Oh, this is too much hard work. We're not going to do this." Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like,
It
you
also
Oh,
know,
fuck this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it reminds me of this piece about this piece that a dude I know T wrote, and my friend Emmy kind of co-wrote it. It was for the New Zealand official sociology journal, fucking some shit. But it was called combat safetyism, and it's like safetyism is this like concept of people like it's like this what is it, it's a politics that prioritizes the immediate safety of protesters over the struggle for liberation and against fascism. And I think it's like a similar kind of thing where it's like, in this piece they talk about various organizations and groups that have been and actions that have been fully undone and defanged by the prioritization of comfort and safety, and just fully just like ceding ground to like fascists or whatever like that, because they're like, oh well, if we go, then like someone might get hurt, or like this might escalate things, like if we confront them or something like that. And and it's like this kind of, I think it's like a similar kind of thing where it's like people would rather like they'd rather not do anything, but they want to be justified in doing so. And I think that sometimes, when people are going into what they might see as like a hostile environment, whether it's like whether it's like they're going to a protest where there might be some confrontation, or they're going into an area or a neighborhood where they might not be seen as necessarily very welcome or whatever. Sometimes there's an effort to justify like why we shouldn't be doing this, that kind of, which ends up derailing and totally destroying some organizations, because it's like, well, what are you fucking doing then? Like, why do you exist? What's the purpose? What are you gonna do if you're not gonna do something that might make you uncomfortable, or even perhaps put you at risk in some way or whatever?
Yeah.
But yeah,
My
it's a really
partner
interesting piece.
my partner
Yeah.
was in a like feminist direct action group for about 10 years, and like in terms of like organizing risk, like there are just a lot of things you can do to like you can very basically just be like, no one has to take part in a thing that they don't personally feel comfortable with the risk level, and that's just a common practice, like has been for them for years. But also like the other thing is just like all the work you can do to make sure that like that you have each other's backs. And it's just like people will feel more up for doing the thing. And the same is true for if you say only take part if you feel comfortable with it. If you say that and then you look and like most of your comrades are saying, yeah, I feel comfortable with it, I'm going to do it, then you will be like, yeah, okay, I probably feel like I could go along and do that thing because they're all doing it and I'll be with them and that'll make me safer.
Yeah, definitely. I just watched the movie Elf just before I came on this show. 'Cause I've got a 2-year-old, and well, it was more for me. It was definitely more
Yeah,
for
of
me.
course it
Yeah, yeah.
was.
And there's have we seen the movie Elf?
I've seen bits of it.
I've seen it.
Right. So the kind of the climactic scene at the end is like, um, Santa needs more Christmas spirit, right, in order to get the sleigh going. So this woman stands up, Zoe Deschanel stands up, and she starts singing Santa Claus is coming to town in front of this crowd of about 100 quite moody New Yorkers. And like she gets through like one round of it and no one joins in, you feel they're sorry for her. And then like one person who really can't sing gets involved, and then one by one they all get. And there's this, but it doesn't just go like linearly. It's like it gets to about five, and then all of a sudden it's like almost the whole audience. And then there's still like this one grumpy dad at the end. But then when he finally starts singing it, then it's like right in the Christmas spirit. But anyway, yeah. What I suppose what I'm trying to say is that like these phenomena of like this phenomenon of collective empowerment is just everywhere in popular culture. Like we don't need like all these fancy words that no one fucking understands. When we can just go, have you seen Elf? Or have you seen Matilda? That scene with Bruce
Seeing a
Bogtrotter and
fucking
Kate.
A Bug's Life, Ants, Chicken Run,
Yeah,
fucking all that shit.
Yeah,
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 yeah. And stories are really powerful, and
true.
we're still more feelers than we are thinkers. Like we're
Yeah.
still embodied
Extremely
mammals
true.
with fucking brains in meat sacks. Like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. One of our
Yeah,
comrades from the ZAD always talks about her body mind. She just never talks about like how she's feeling or thinking distinctly or her like stuff in her body. Always the body mind is one thing.
Um, this I think that it was definitely like super valuable for us to talk about this particular phenomena of I think that it can be broadly seen as I guess left wing conflict avoidance and refusal to sort of like look inwards and stuff. But like yeah, it was pertaining to an actual like a thing that you were answering, which was about like what are the difficulties in like going into communities and essentially like selling the idea of assemblies, selling the idea of Cooperation Manchester. Um, I think it is good that like that's something that you're aware of as an organization. What other kind of issues have you had with that, or what other kind of successes have you had with it?
um, yeah. Let's start with the successes. Um, so yeah, it just kind of like turns out that people are a lot nicer when there's more people. when they're when they can be like directly held to account. I think, you know, social media has just it's totally transformed the way in which we communicate, especially regarding this particular thing. You know, it's very easy for us to hide behind our keyboards, um, and not check ourselves and just be pretty much totally unaccountable. We don't we don't see someone else's um it could be someone else's tears. You know, it could just be an energy that you see, the body language. The body's not there. Like it's just insane. It's unscientific. We only verbalize for about 15 to 20% of our overall communications. Like so much is body language and the energy, the vibe, right? The vibe. Um. So sorry, sidetracked. Keep doing this. Yes, so successes. People focus more on what they've got in common when they're in physical space with each other, it seems. Um, and especially when there is something quite something hmm, that they commonly care about that's like made clear enough. Like it's about this. Um, that's not to say that we shouldn't talk about the more difficult stuff, the more controversial stuff and whatnot. Um, but yeah, people just tend to get on the general really a lot better. Um, I think it's really important though that we do state those ground rules at the start because a lot of some people, especially those with the stronger egos in the room, will absolutely take the opportunities of a more kind of open arrangement for a meeting to dominate. Um, and sometimes in quite manipulative ways. Um, so yeah, there's been some moments where it's got a bit hairy, and one particular moment that springs to mind is like someone used uh, a sexually violent word to describe something that wasn't sexually violent, and I got really triggered and didn't didn't compose myself as much as I would have liked to compose myself in that moment. Um, I just kind of lost it a little bit. Um, yeah, and I'm kind of reflecting on that now. I'm going like, right, that's something to work on. But, but that's linking back to the trauma, you know. Um, so yeah, I think it's often because you are talking like so the Hume Neighbourhood Assembly launch, for example, it's about Hume. Like you come here because you care about Hume. Um, I think when there's already that kind of common cause, then the conflicts that arise are usually less kind of like issue based or topic based, and more so um, how people are handling themselves, how they are emotionally, and various power dynamics, which of course very much relate to social hierarchies that have again been forced upon us for so long, and our positions within those hierarchies, but also our entire emotional histories and those of our families. And yeah, there's also been a few moments where like someone's like got a wacky conspiracy theory, um, and it's kind of like we, you know, don't. Yeah, I suppose if someone wants to tell them that they think that's bullshit, then whatever, like fair, like.
I'm sure I don't know who you're talking about.
um, but yeah, I think we've got to keep the mindset of like, right, well, you might think that, and I might think that that is way off, but that also means that you think I'm way off. Like, and right, okay, but what do you want to do? Do you want to do
Yeah.
out together? Like, do you want to just like, do you want to reclaim that street there that's like that should be pedestrianized? Yeah,
Yeah.
all right, sound great. Let's crack on.
Yeah.
I don't really care what you think about vaccines. Like
Yeah.
at this moment, you
Yeah.
know.
I think it's I think that's such an important thing to take to organizing. And I think that this is it's a thing where like again it goes back to what we were talking about before, where I think people on the left, generally speaking, especially if they've had that informed opinion that they have about how things should be from the internet, where the way that you get things done on the internet is you yell and you yell and you yell, and if someone doesn't listen, you make a big Google doc about them about how they're the worst person ever and they should be destroyed. But like it's those kinds of people who like really don't understand that if we want to get anywhere, we do have to sit with people who are going to have like mad opinions. Like, you know, in the amount of time since doing this show and doing organizing, I've met all kinds of people with all kinds of fucking political opinions.
Yeah.
I've met Stalin, like really, like, you know, there's a joke on this show that I'm a bit of a Stalinist, but really I'm not. And I've met real hardline Stalinists, and I've met real hardline, you know, Trots. I've met real hardline Maoists, and all kinds of people, and you know, I think that that's what people have to understand. But also, you know, conversely, away from left wing politics, I've you know, I've sat with some really right wing people, not like racist or fascist, but like certainly people who are like they've got those kind of conspiratorial ideas and they're like extremely conservative, but
Yeah.
they agree with, you know, broadly what the organization that I've been in is doing. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, you have to, again, it's like you say, meeting people where they're at, understanding that like not everybody is going to have a great informed idea of the world, but if you do the work, you will be able to change someone's mind. If you could sit there in solidarity with someone, if you could sit there and say, well, actually, this person voted Tory, this person voted for Brexit, but I don't think they should be homeless. I don't think they should have the home demolished. Let's campaign to save them. Like, that's how you change people's minds. You change people's minds through you know, solidarity with them, and yeah, having to sit there and have some uncomfortable discussions. But I think that that's the key, right? You just have like a ground rule of like, hey, what we're doing is we're talking about issues that we think are in the community. If everybody broadly agrees, then that's what we focus on. But if it's just you and like three of your weird mates who don't come to meetings that often, who are saying, actually, like, I can't be in a room with that person because they're evil, then like, sorry, but that's not the issue of the community. You just have like a strange opinion. You know, and that goes from everything from like,
Yeah.
you know, racism to transphobia to infighting, you know, everything. You know, that's the way that you present it, right? Because then everybody just kind of understands. It's like, yeah, no one's really asked about that. Yeah, let's reclaim that street.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all got a bit silly, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've yeah, we were homeless for a little while. We weren't street homeless, but like I lost the flat, and it was like 2 years before we got another flat, and for a year of that was with our newborn baby as well, and it was the Stalinist who put us up.
I remember you telling me this. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he is so Stalinist, man. Oh, and some of the stuff he was saying, like all sorts of horrific transphobic stuff as well. And I was like, whoa, wow, like you got brutalized as a child, like really
Yeah.
badly, and like, oh, I really felt for him at the same time as being like horrified by like some of his positions. He said to me one night, like with a total straight face, he was like, "Believe me when I say this, Sean, but like." We're on different paths. You've got your path to socialism, and I've got mine. And believe me when I say this, if it should come to it, I will rain down on you with red terror.
Oh no.
And I just like went,
Yeah.
all right.
That's
Just
cool,
kind of like
man.
the awkward laugh.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would
I'm
have
gonna
not
be
laughed.
organizing to try and feed you and stuff, man. You can do what you
Yeah,
want, but
yeah.
like
But like, it's so interesting that he never tried to recruit me to the Communist Party.
Mm,
Like, and I wouldn't say his solidarity was unconditional. It
yeah.
was on the condition that we only stay there for 3 months. But he welcomed us so much, and
Mm,
he let us be in the space as us as us little weirdos,
Yeah,
and we barely knew the guy. It was just that like he respected us and was like,
yeah.
yeah, they're doing something that seems good, like, and they've got a little baby. So yeah, it's often yeah, it's often the case that, and now we have a really beautiful relationship. Like
Mm,
every time we see each other, which is rarely, and he's this giant guy, and he's so macho. I bet I'm the only guy that he hugs, apart from like maybe his own
yeah,
son. Like, but we have this embrace, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is gorgeous. Like,
mm,
and I, ultimately, I feel that the revolution is far more relational than
mm,
than
yes,
than we're kind of taught to believe, you know. And
yeah.
I think it's the building of these bonds that demonstrate like real care and real solidarity, far beyond going solidarity, comrade. What? What? I don't even fucking know you.
solidarity when used as a like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like saying thoughts and prayers. That's one of
Yeah,
the best.
yeah. I feel like
Yeah,
it ties into kind of what you were saying earlier, and also in like some of the statements of intent and stuff that you sent through to us about, this idea of things like solidarity and community as just as like an abstract concept, as opposed to like an actual like a thing that you do and or a thing that you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also kind of ties into, like when people talk about, like we were saying earlier, about like, being part of the queer community. And it's like, okay, well, what community is that? Like, what does that mean? Like, and when you say like, like I'm standing in solidarity, does that, like, what does that mean for you? Like, what are you doing, or what have you done? Are you just saying it, or is this
yeah.
or is this just is this something that you're doing? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the most frustrating things because when I think about, yeah, like literally that same example again, like the queer community where I live, obviously, like, I live in town near the gay village, and it's like the people who knock around in the gay village who are, my community are a absolute smorgasbord of like conservative, weird queers who own bars and they own loads of property. Some of them are landlords, to like, meth heads in the park who are just like constantly cruising and they're sex workers and it's like everything you could imagine from the queer community except for like left wing community organizer queer kind of people. It's just like they're just not here, and it's like so my queer
Mm.
community is just like demonstrably not that, and I guess like that's where I guess an organization like Cooperation Manchester could come in. Not Cooperation Manchester themselves, but like if there was queer people, like for example, if I were to join Cooperation Manchester, I think that would be one of the first things I would do. Would be like, let's go and do some door knocking all up and down the flats around Canal Street that I know queer people live in, and my
Mm.
building, other buildings, and talk about the issues that are affecting us. And the issues that are affecting us will be rent for a lot of people. It will be trans rights. The way in which trans rights is encroaching onto other anti-queer sentiment, hate crimes, stuff like that. And that's how you get it started, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it's like this is the when I was saying earlier about the London activist scene, it's way more pronounced here than it is in other places. But as you're saying, it is still present in other places that just like activists and the people who they most need to be involved with and representing and working with and organizing with are just not in touch. And I think that it's been so present for me being trans in London and in the activist scene and also being like mentally ill, and most people I know are mentally ill, and most people I know use drugs, and most people I know have done sex work, and like interacting with people who are the like kind of very central in a bunch of like trans activist stuff, moving the biggest blocks around, and then being like really publicly ashamed of the like mental illness, drug use, sex work, all sorts of shit in the trans community. That's like this is some of the stuff that's the most direct symptoms of our struggles that you're just like kind of pretending isn't there unless you talk about it in a super abstract way. And you have to talk about it in an abstract way because you have no personal experience of it, or like you
Mm,
don't know people who have been through it. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and I think mental illness is a really striking one for me because I think that people are incredibly ashamed of the idea of mental illness or of anyone having poor mental health and don't want to like confront the idea of those of people existing with poor mental health at all in their community when it's like you don't have to be, it's not your fault if you're not doing well, as we've been saying, like it's just a traumatic world that's like horrible to us all the time. But yeah, people are sort of like pushing into the side, like out people push the people who are most struggling actively out of the spotlight so that they can represent a cleaner image towards like respectable society. And that's just not a revolutionary practice in the slightest.
Nope, it's really not. Um, yeah. So I've had a chronic illness that's still undiagnosed for like most of my adult life. Um, it's either fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome and various other things. Um, and yeah, it's kind of like forced me to slow down a lot in like the last few years, especially since the last time I came on the show. Slow down a hell of a lot. And then like I can't really go to demos as much anymore because I get like sensory overwhelm. I can't really engage with like international geopolitical stuff as much anymore because it's just so stressful and it's just so painful. Like, and I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter who's like homeschooling. Um, and I think I feel like it's been important for me to go through this process to understand what other people have gone through as well. Because I was just going at like lightning speed with like, and I was just going on with every endeavor in my life, like so much pressure on myself, so much pressure, go, 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 and then just go up brick wall, okay, and now I realize it was necessary, and I think, oh yeah, I think these things really need to be talked about um, because it brings us closer together. It generates intimacy. But the cultures of our movements need to be guided by them. Like this needs to be like front and center. Like otherwise, it's kind of like you go into war and then just like leaving your wounded behind. Like it's incredible like how many of these
That's very apt.
how few of these so-called comrades have actually reached out to me like in the last few years.
Right. And I think that
Yeah.
that's like it's a really poorly misunderstood thing because, when people you know, talk about the way in which, they have physical health problems or mental health problems, and they talk about how it affects them in organizing, a lot of the times it comes down like the way that people want to deal with these things, it manifests in these very like what's the right way to describe this mid 90s new age kind of hippie like you when you sit in a circle I hear a lot. I mean, I don't mean to speak for anyone here, but like I know that trans people hate pronoun circles, right? It's like embarrassing and like it's you don't need to do this, just like ask
It's
them.
more just like the classic idea is that like as a trans woman especially, you'll show up somewhere and it's like it's incredibly obvious that you want to be she'd and heard. You're wearing a dress and makeup and you got long hair, and someone will just like flinch as soon as they see you and then turn to everyone else and be like, "Oh, let's all do a pronoun circle now so we know what everyone's pronouns are now." And it's
That's
just
what I
like,
mean. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And it's like that kind of like badly thought out way of dealing with burnout and stress and like mental health and all this kind of stuff. It devolves into like, oh well, at the start of the meeting we'll just have a check-in and see how everyone's doing. But what that results in is that one person will just be like for half an hour straight just being like, yeah, and then my dog died, and then I fell over and like pissed my pants and it was like the worst day ever. And they don't stop. And it's like, and then it becomes like, oh, okay, you're using this as therapy. And that's when that kind of has to stop, right? Yeah, we have to think of more productive ways that we look after our comrades. And I think it's
Yeah.
about making things more accessible. It's about making people more aware of like the kind of work that can be done and should be
If
done.
if people need to chat, like if people need space to like chat with their comrades and work through stuff and they're not doing well and all this, like you just need to nurture that in the culture that you're in and like nurture a culture of like actually caring for each other as a community, right? Like I referenced my partner being in a feminist direct action thing for a long time earlier, and like it was a very successful one that like held together for such a long time so well because they had really good community practices. And one thing is like they would read that Asata Shakur thing at the end of every single meeting, like we have a duty to fight for our freedom, we have a duty to win, we have a duty to love, we must love each other and care for each other. And it's like, yeah, you must love each other and care for each other. Like there's a really careful balance of like as we've been talking about so far, like being in a room with someone you actually kind of can't stand, but you're there for the same reason, and also doing this stuff with people you love. And like the kind of crucial thing there is to like not let anyone just be like the guy, like the Billy no mates at the meeting, like Stinky Norman who's there, like everyone's tolerating him and no one's gonna check in, and that guy's having a fucking rough time, and everyone else is all mates. Like, not do that. Like, try to like create community spaces so that that person can like come into the fold or whatever. At the same time, like not just organize with your mates or not just show up to the meeting and like have no other contact. You need to be friend, like you need to be in community to some degree. Everyone needs to be in community a bit. Not everyone's going to get it through the same orgs. There are going to be some people who just show up to this one org and they're not actually interested in the socials. But yeah, there needs to be a broader like strengthening of our community instincts and practices together.
Talk to us a bit about how
It does. Right.
Cooperation Manchester. Oh, sorry, go on.
Um, no, it's okay. Go on. Yeah,
I was gonna.
I just wanted to kind of like, yeah, I was only gonna like just say some of the same stuff with different words. So Yeah.
that would be too comfortable, wouldn't it? And we should
Yeah.
push our
Yeah.
comfort zone. Yeah, no, I was gonna say, talk to us a bit about how like the idea for Cooperation Manchester came about, because obviously you've had these feelings, you've done organizing, you've done loads of we spoke to you about Just Stop Oil when you came on the show last
Mhm.
time. Yeah, just talk to us about like, you know, how it all got started, and what the sort of like, I guess like the kickstart moment was, because that's kind of the purpose of our show, right? It's like saying to people like, this is how you do this in your town, this is how you do this where you live. What was like, yeah, the first kind of like steps to get it sorted and kicked off?
Um. So yeah. Um. I come out of Just Stop Oil and I was feeling all sorts of big feelings about it. Um. And looking for something else. It had really burnt me out. Um. It had really let me down. Um. But I wanted to carry on. Um. I don't see it as an option. To just escape. Um. So I just started looking for things that were still very radical, but had very different internal cultures and ways of doing things and of being in that doing. Um, and yeah, Corporation Jackson kind of got passed on to me by some old XR buddies. And yeah, like a little group of us in Manchester, um, started looking at Jackson and getting all excited and being like, right, okay, like we plan to stay in Manchester at least for a while, um, maybe our whole lives. Um, we're all a bit lost. This looks like something that we might be able to replicate in Manchester. Um, what was really interesting was how much we lacked the necessary connections to do the work in the first place, because we've been doing all this heroic activism, this very kind of this egocentric, performative stuff, um, for quite a while, and like we didn't even know our neighbors. We didn't
Yeah,
even know who ran the pubs that we were going in. Like we just did not have community organizing experience. Um, So we very early on decided that we definitely weren't going to be another small group of activists that just kind of like comes up with a strategy between us and then like tries to recruit people into it and deliver it. That would have just been unbelievably disrespectful. Um, so we just all started doing some grassroots community work, essentially. Like it's just stuff that took our interest. And like personally for me at the time, it was food sovereignty, um, and Gas Garden Project in particular, who I know have been on the show. Um, and it turns out that like this group wasn't only like it it didn't only feel so much better to be doing this kind of work. And by the way, it's urban natural farming, influenced by permaculture, which is obviously permaculture is. It's important to note that it's a colonial term, and it's really taken from millennia of indigenous growing practices. So anyway, um, that project it didn't only feel so much better, it didn't only like nourish me and energize me so much more, but it was more politically radical as well, because you know it was the thinking was a lot deeper. Like there's this whole philosophy behind it, um, which is very much inspired by Taoism or Taoism, whichever, whether you look at Chinese or Japanese. And yeah, and anarchist values, which were quite new to me when I first got involved with that project. And something just kind of like really beautiful as well, like learning about natural rhythms. Like we're still all bound by them. Like we built this really fucking daft world on top of like an already like unbelievably extremely intelligent world. Like that just does its thing without our input. Like it's incredible. Like and yeah, building that connection because I'm from an industrial background as well, so I've just kind of never had this kind of experience.
Yeah.
And this kind of like takes me on to like I was saying before, like that we're embodied mammals and we're not brains in meat sacks. Like we're also like we're more experiential than we are kind
Mm.
of like book learn. You know, like when we teach our children things, like we show them how to do it. I don't go to
Yeah.
my 2-year-old and go like, well, pick up your fork, and then without
Yeah.
showing her how to do it. Like, well, she uses her hands actually because she's rad. But
Yeah. But yeah, like a workshop on doing something is going to be better for everyone who attends than like an online guide or a zine on how to do the thing. Like getting them to
yeah,
do the thing once is always better.
yeah, we're master imitators. It's one of the main reasons why Homo sapiens have survived so long and previous humans died out. But anyway, yeah, so we and other members, like co-founders, we don't even use this kind of language really, but like people at our first meeting just went off into other things, and we just built we just built the kinds of relationships that we felt like we had to build. I didn't know anyone in actually, I don't even think that I knew Greater Manchester Tennis Union even existed like 4 years ago. It's amazing how things can just be so hidden in plain sight because it's so kind of like tunnel vision on this one thing. And for me, it was climate. But the thing about Jackson that was so well, not the only thing, but like one thing that was particularly inspiring is that they had this really holistic view, this really big picture view, and included within that was, they're really on it with the climate stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so we just carried on like volunteering stuff. Some of our members joined like existing worker co-ops, um, and just kept turning up at stuff and just like getting to know people. But like not the, yes, with something of a mission in mind, but not too much because like then you've got too much of an agenda, and I think what's yeah, it's just going back to like meeting people where they're at. We want to meet people because we want to meet people because we want to like I don't know, we want to have experiences with each other that go somewhere, that like change us in some way, that challenge us in some way. Um, so yeah, um, and then after a while, we put on the launch party. So the launch party was actually like a year after the first meeting. Also in that year, we just did like shitloads of research and mapping and databasing and stuff. Um, and then we launched, and we had about 10 different organizations that had their little stalls and someone to get up to speak. That's like you were saying before, some of them like quite different to each other. But we didn't go like, right, here's our vision, here's our strategy, like you in or you're out. We said like, what do you want it to be? Like, and we're still doing that, to a much lesser degree now. But when we in the first instance of doing that, it was really uncomfortable. People were so uncomfortable with it They were like, "What? What do you mean? What do you mean you've not got it all figured out? Like, what do you mean you've not got the vision?" Like, it's like, well, why? That's I just don't see how our perspective is like, no, this is like something that like
Mm.
people from all over Greater Manchester, which, like I was saying before, is really big and really diverse. Um, need to come into this and need to be able to shape it. So we've just kept
Yeah.
providing those opportunities for people to do that.
Mm.
And we've held a few assemblies now as well. So the first assembly was like we put on a big Christmas meal and we were just asking these kinds of questions. Um,
Cool.
what kind of principles, values should this be driven by? Like, how should it be structured? Like, how? Basically, how? Um, and we're
Yeah.
getting to a point now, slowly but surely, whereby we've gathered quite a lot of responses to these questions, and we're forming these foundational documents, which I mentioned before. I sent it over in advance.
Yeah, they're looking
It's
really
like,
good.
right, it's like, oh, this thing is now we kind of like starting to feel that we can, when people ask us what it is, we can say what it is, you know.
Perfect.
Um,
Um, yeah, I think
yeah,
it's kind of a strange one because like I think that it's actually fairly clear if you just go around and chat to a bunch of people, people broadly have like a lot of the same and quite positive and quite collectivist ideas. Like there are a lot of racist grannies out there, but there are also just like a lot of people who like when you get deep with them and they kind of trust you enough to have this chat and you talk about like what the best society would look like, they just describe the same thing. And it's kind of strange that we um, can simultaneously kind of see that, and also we, with a political education, keep on approaching people being like, this is how we're going to do it, and like telling them. And it's like, but people will feel more invested, as well as it just being better for everyone, if you all get together and decide together. But as you said, like that is a bit scary, like to be confronted with like we're gonna figure this out together. Um, yeah, people can find that very challenging. Um,
yeah, and
oh, go on, sorry.
yeah, and I don't by any means think it's the perfect way of doing things, you know, but by
Sure.
doing things this way, like inevitably, like the more kind of confident people like come forward first and whatnot. So, you know, there are things like that to consider. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, it is getting to the point now where it's kind of solidifying, and I think
great.
I do feel that's going to help quite a lot because I, I think especially as we try to engage more with people who are much less politically engaged,
Hmm.
socially engaged, you know, like we're asking them to give some precious free time, and people are getting worked harder and harder and harder for less and less money. Um, yeah, so getting something solidified and being able to kind of say to people quite clearly now what it is and like what an assembly is and what a solidarity economy is.
Yeah,
Do you fancy coming along to this thing, you know, for a few hours? Um, yeah, it's got a bit of a hook there. Yeah.
Nice.
yeah, that's
Nice.
fantastic. I've been about to release a video about trans assemblies for ages because I think it's what the trans community needs really, really badly. And just been taking a break from work for a little bit over the winter, but I'm really vibing with all the stuff you're saying. I think it's so essential to what we need. We have a couple of questions from the audience to finish us out. The first one, Aslan Silva has asked. Would love to know about any community projects so far that have grown out of Corporation Manchester assemblies.
Yes, yes, can't believe it. Yeah, you got to deliver first, haven't you? Um, yeah, okay. The so we had the first two assemblies were like Greater Manchester wide, and there were these kind of assemblies like I've just described. And then third assembly that we did was in a specific neighbourhood, and we chose Hume, which is where I live, which has a very unique personality to it. And we asked again these very broad questions like what already exists here, how can we use that better, what's missing, what do we need, what concrete action can we take, and there were just loads of ideas, concrete actions. The first one that we went with, it's not world changing by any means, but it's something that was agreed on, and it's something that, like, when we went around door knocking, people were really passionate about. Is there's this little green space. It's like this little, it's this square, little shady square between. You'll know it, Mule. It's between like the Naya, the Hippodrome, the Garden Centre, the Afro Caribbean Care Group, and the
I know
primary
exactly
school.
where you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just scruffy. Like, it's been neglected for so long by the council because it's just this shady area that if you're in a car, you don't see it.
Yeah.
Right, and it's attracted a lot of fly tipping over the decades and drug dealing, and people, women in particular, were saying that they don't feel safe walking through it. So it's like, right, okay, that's something that we're all in agreement enough in this room. Let's do something about it. And so we just did a tidy up. We had so it's the start of a long-term project. The long-term project is to totally transform this space using permaculture values. So it's not just like, oh, we're gonna put in some raised beds and wildflowers and give it a nice sweep once in a while. It's like, no, this is gonna be a site where the immediate neighbours gather on a regular basis and have potentially transformative experiences. But anyway, the first action was to just give it a tidy up because it was just an absolute mess. So we tidied up really nice. We put some pictures on the Instagram before and after, and people liked it. People turned up, like people that never met, and even some people who didn't come to the assembly. Like, someone had passed it on. Um, People brought like their own tools. Like someone brought some wood for us to use to build a raised bed. Someone baked an apple crumble and served it out of the boot of a car, and it was just great. And you know, it was not perfectly timed. Like, we started that like mid autumn, and then kind of winter comes along, and no one wants to really do gardening. But we're kind of like taking the opportunity now to reflect on that, and like in the spring, like get back on it and have like a long-term plan. And we've got permaculture design course leaders in our membership and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the first project that's come out of the Hume Neighbourhood Assembly, and the next project is a regular pay as you feel community meal at a social centre which is like really under threat. It's in a lot of debt. It's the Naya meal. It's in a hell of a lot of debt. But it's such an important um, place. It really is. It's got such a rich history. It's like one of those last bastions of like black led resistance in human Mossad, um, and there's been ups and downs with trying to kind of manage their struggles, a lot of interpersonal stuff, but things are slowly improving, it feels, at the moment. But yeah, having a regular community meal there, which is not just pay as you feel, but good. Like, this is, people care about quality. And I've been to quite, and I've done it myself. I've put on meals and whatnot, and it's like it's nice and whatnot. But I think, like, some like nice little touches. Like, I think,
Well, sometimes people cook a meal with an idea that it's being made for a pay-as-you-feel meal,
yeah,
and they
that's
schneid
it. And
out.
it's gonna be shit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
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 So
But it
like,
shouldn't be like that.
can we create like a restaurant or like family pub kind of vibe and level of quality.
There was a
At the
really
same
good one
time
of
as it
those.
being really,
I used to go in Melbourne occasionally. There was an old convent that was like this kind of community space. Um, and there was a group, I think they were a Sri Lankan group that ran like a pay as you want restaurant out there, and it was really fucking good. And it was like a community pillar, like this place, and there would be like live music playing on certain nights. There was like things that would happen there, and that was the thing. It was like it wasn't just like you can go there and pay whatever you want and it's some slop that technically has some calories in it. Like it was really fucking good Sri Lankan food. um and yeah, and it went for a long time, but it eventually just shut down because it's just, like it's hard to keep the doors open when you do stuff like that. So,
yeah,
which was a real shame because it was actually a really amazing place with like a really beautiful vision. But yeah, but it's kind of what happens, right?
yeah. And it's not just feeding people. It's not just charity. Like, I mean, why not feed people? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
first and foremost. Um, but yeah, also like where you source your food from, and
Mm.
and that story, so it could be that it's just been grown around the corner in like someone's back garden. Like, it could be that it's been grown on that community garden project that you can get involved in. It could be that like it's like this 77-acre farm that's like a 30-minute drive away that's doing like organic growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
100%.
we have another question
Yeah.
from the chat. And yeah, if we can get a brief answer on this one, if that's all right, because we got to wrap
Sorry,
up.
yeah, I flag on, sorry.
No, you don't need to apologize. It's all right. Um, the question is, would you love to know about, sorry, would love to know. Oh, no, no, no. I've already asked that one. We've already asked that one. The question is also, any other key inspirations outside of Cooperation Jackson?
Yeah. Um, a, a very direct one is our friends in Cooperation Hull, who I missed out when I told the origin story. They kind of took on the Jackson model before we did, and they've gone about things very differently to us in many ways, but that same kind of original um, inspiration. Um, Cooperation Towns in London, they're based in Camden, and their model is establishing and nurturing as many food buying co-ops as possible. So that's just like small groups of neighbours who buy in bulk together to keep the costs down, essentially. That's it. That's it. And I love that because it's just like it's prioritizing social fabric and
100%.
material conditions. It's like, it's not trying to be perfect. It's like, yeah. Um, there's also Corporation Sheffield who have taken on the Jackson model as well. We work closely with them. Internationally, um, yeah, there's a group called Native Roots who are part of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, which Corporation Jackson are also part of. They're incredible. They're out in California, and yeah, it's led by Indigenous people, um, and it's so rad. It's like the most beautiful rad thing I've ever seen. Like yeah, they're doing really great work there. They're getting a lot of people kind of into um, local community power and solidarity economy kind of building through like reclaiming a lot of these lost traditions. Of course, the Zapatistas, who I'm sure you covered on the show, um, things that have been happening in Rojava of late. Um, there's various kind of experiments in participatory democracy across Latin America. Um, there's just so much of it out there.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think because it just makes sense.
It
Yeah.
does. It just does. Yeah, exactly. So that
Yeah.
was Corporation Jackson, which we've already talked about a bunch. There's also, and now I'm reading from the homework you sent us, but there's Jackson, Tulsa, Denton in the USA. And in the UK,
Yeah,
there's Hull, Sheffield, Birmingham, Corporation
yeah, Birmingham.
Towns. That one's in London, so I'll be checking that out for
Yeah,
sure. Native Roots, you said, and that's part of the People's Network for Land and Liberation. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Cool.
Dope.
yeah.
Um,
And just there's so much out there, and I think like if you ever yeah, a dose of inspiration for me is just always to go and listen to Kyle Akuno, who's one of the co-founders of Corporation Jackson, and he's just like gets me every time. And like there's a podcast. It's only 22 minutes long. I'll shall I find the link right now? Or shall I send it
Probably
later?
don't have time to wait for you to
Send
find
it
the
through.
link,
We'll
Anyway,
put it in the
but
yeah,
description.
yeah, we'll put it in the
what he
description
talks,
for people. Yeah.
yeah, he talks about like how through more so through building a culture within our social movements and our organizing, rather than like it being based on ideology and like our theories in here, like how much more we can know each other more intimately, like despite never and how much more trust we can have despite never have never have met. Like I can if I go to like one of these other places, like there's already some level of trust there. Like, right, you really mean this stuff. 'Cause I've seen you doing it. Like, and that's ultimately how we build trust in each other is by like practicing what we preach, really, in it,
Yeah.
and showing up. You know.
That is absolutely it. So yeah, the rest of the stuff that we've got, because you were very good and you gave us the homework in the Google Doc that we
Oh, it's
that
too
we
much homework though, isn't it?
no, it's great. I think it's really, really good. I think just the idea of just check out those different cooperations that you've mentioned: Cooperation Jackson, Tulsa, Denton, Hull, Sheffield, Birmingham, all the ones that we mentioned previously. You've also said read Jackson Rising by Cooperation Jackson members. Overcoming Burnout by Nicole Rose. It is a lot of homework. No one's going to do all this. The myth
I'm
of
gonna check
normal.
out. I'm
Yeah.
gonna check out the corporations local to me in London, and I'm definitely gonna
Yes.
read all these
Yeah,
books.
you could
Definitely.
delegate. Yeah,
There's loads of different bits of homework that everyone in the chat could do, so you can pick and
Together, we
choose.
can all get the homework done. That's the
Exactly.
lesson.
Yes. If all 500 of these bits of homework are done by 500 different people, then that'll be fine. Yeah, and you already mentioned The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate.
yeah.
Check out Joanna Macy's The Work That Reconnects. That one sounds
Oh,
interesting.
stunning. Yeah,
And join your local cooperation groups or start a new one where you live, organize assemblies, build local solidarity networks and economies. Just do something really simple with your immediate neighbours. And of course, if you need any advice, get in touch with Cooperation Manchester or the most local one. Thanks very much for coming on again, mate. Really appreciate that. And I'm sure we would love to speak to you again in the future because there's always so much to talk about whenever we have you on. Any final things that you'd like to plug or promote?
Um. Oh, I didn't know I had to do this.
No, you don't have to. I was
Like,
just yes or no.
if I'd known, I would have like, oh yeah. No, not really. I think like
Okay.
just the way that you kind of wrapped up, then just like go and go and do some of this stuff. And you always feel free to email us if Manchester, even if Manchester's not your nearest place, like if it's just because you've seen me on here chatting some shit, like it's code-operation ncr at protonmail.com.
There you go.
And yeah, we're on Instagram as well, Operation Manchester.
Ab.
Buzzing. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for joining us. And I'm
great.
sure I'll see you soon, but hopefully we could get you on the show again in the future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really lovely. I knew it would be lovely.
Always.
Cheers,
All right.
guys.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks a
Take
lot.
care.
Yeah, good night. Ciao.
Good night.
Bye.
That was great. Love Sean. Always
Yeah,
a great time with Sean.
yeah.
Now we must remind everyone in the audience that Red Planet is a show made possible by our Patreon. Our supporters at patreon.com/red_planet make the show possible, and we need you to make the show possible. Please go to patreon.com/red_planet because the show can't happen if you don't. And we'd like to keep on doing the show and keep on doing all the things associated with the show. Bonus episodes. We want to finish the Zad doc. Um, there is a new bonus episode, actually, speaking of, that we just recorded last week and is coming out as the live stream is happening. So if you're hearing this on the future podcast as well, literally it's literally been up for ages if you're hearing this. It's called ACAB Includes Cop 30, and it's about what a fucking disaster Cop was and is, and it is in its essence. But anyway, there's so much exciting stuff, and we're like progressing with the Zad documentary, which we're really excited about. So again, so many reasons to support us on Patreon. The most pressing one just being the basic existence of the show. If you do it at different tiers, you'll get different rewards. There's a Discord, there's merch, etc. You can read all about them. But at the highest tier, which is called the Sicko Mode tier, and it's for $100 a month, you get a personal thank you on the end of every show, which looks like this. Thank you to Risk Inverse for being our sicko and
Thank
supporting
you.
the show. Thank you, Risk Inverse. But if people wanted more, Tim, where could they go?
If people want more Tim, they could find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as Dread Conquest, or Twitch and YouTube as Conquest of Dread. And if they're interested in tabletop RPGs, they can look up my project Dark RPG on Twitter at DarkRPG2000. Dark dystopian future thingy coming soon, very, very late into its development. Gonna be probably launching like a Kickstarter for it soon, which probably shout out when that gets going on here. But yeah, what about Mule? Where can we find out more about Mule?
You can get me Monday to Thursday at twitch.tv/DJMUEL. I cover the news, I cover politics. We have a look at landlord brain rot, garbage, content that tries to paint tenants as evil, horrible, and scary, and it's super embarrassing. They just get loads of stuff wrong. One of the episodes that I reacted to this week, it made me probably the most angry I've ever been in my entire life in such a short, concentrated amount of time. Just with the way that this one particular landlord was just so like ignorant of how evil they were being, and genuinely thought that they were such a small being and they could never do anything wrong. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff I react to. And yeah, I'm also making a new YouTube video on the Filton 24 activists who were arrested before the prescription of Palestine Action for allegedly doing Palestine actions, and how they've been held in prison in awful conditions in some of the most brutal and violent prisons in the UK. Despite having not been charged with anything as of yet. So take a look at that. That'll be coming out soon. If you want updates on that, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/DJMUEL, and also my YouTube channel, which is just DJ Mule, DJMUEL on YouTube. But if I wanted to find more Soph, where could I find her?
I like the idea of Palestine actions as a way of being and doing in the world. Doing some
Yeah,
Palestine actions on the way
that's what I was
on my way
thinking
to the
as well.
fridge in the middle of the night. It's just
Yep.
like keeping up on my Palestine actions. Anyway, I'm a YouTuber. I make video essays. I have a really good one about Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy that came out this year, and not enough people watched it. So as a Christmas present to me, please go watch my video about Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy. And I'll have some new stuff in the new year, but I'm kind of taking the winter off. So if you want to keep me fed and clothed and warm, please go to patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. Support me there. All the new stuff and behind the scenes stuff will be there as it happens. As I said earlier, I got Trans Assemblies video coming out, and I am looking long term on this Mad and the Mentally Ill project about Mad Liberation. I'm also streaming every Friday on Twitch. You can find it all at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. And that's me. So we'll see you all soon. Same time and place. Bye for now.
Next time, next week. See you. Bye.
Bye.